Sunny 85 tomorrow. Having a properly insulated attic in the summer is like having shade. You'll stay cooler. Call USI Mesa Insulation today. Make an appointment at 602-346-9287 and they'll send you to a spring training game. I'm staff meteorologist John Weatherby.
71 degrees right now. The Dow is up 232 points at 18,192. The S&P is up 25 at 2114. The NASDAQ up 46 at 5,038. Reporting for Money Radio, I'm Ken Morgan.
The views expressed on the following program do not necessarily reflect the views of Money Radio staff, management, or advertisers, and do not represent an offer to buy or sell any securities. Some interviews heard on this program may be sponsored by the participants. It's time for Health Futures with Cypress HomeCare Solutions, Bob Roth. This is Arizona's only show dedicated to providing you with expert advice on how to live a longer, healthier, and happier life. To learn more, call 602-264-8009. That's 602-264-8009. Now, here's your host, Bob Roth.
Good afternoon. My name is Bob Roth, and you are listening to Health Futures, Taking Stock in You. And we're a weekly show found right here on Money Radio, 1510 AM, 99.3 FM, coming at you live from the Scottsdale Air Park. And we are reporting here live, and I've got two incredible guests in our studio today. And I want to take a moment and just preface it by saying that there are a lot of questions that our aging adult population have when they get closer to end of life. And, a lot of questions that many of us can't answer, and we seek to find those answers. And I thought it would be really appropriate to bring on to our show today two people that I admire and respect very much. I've got Rabbi Stephen Kahn here with us from Congregation Beth Israel. And I've got Dr. Frank Shirvinski here from Chaparral Church, who is the lead pastor over there, to talk about Judeo and Christian views on end of life. And these are very, very important discussion topics when we are dealing with family members and loved ones that are nearing their end of life. And there are lots of questions. So welcome to Money Radio and welcome to Health Futures, guys.
Yes. Thank you for having us.
Well, I can't help but think about the movie Keeping the Faith and thinking about Ben Stiller and Ed Norton. So I've got Ben Stiller and Ed Norton here in the house, Keeping the Faith, the God Squad, if you would. And, talking about the spirituality, that people connect more to their spirituality when they get closer to the end of life and they're looking for answers. And I wanted just to open it up and just say thank you for joining us here on the show today.
You're welcome. And
I've got a number of questions, and we've had a chance to visit to really talk beforehand. And, a couple things do happen when we're dealing with end of life, and that is, it's a lot of people are looking for either a miracle or they're looking for that smooth end. And I know that, you see that a lot with the families that you guys deal with. And a lot of family members are pressuring for that loved one to live when they really no longer can. And, I guess what I'm asking you guys is, how do you deal with that? Because I know that they're looking to you guys for answers.
Well, thank you for starting with the easiest question, with the least complication.
Well, I was going to start with a joke, just so you know. The rabbi and the pastor.
Can you do that so that I can take a few more seconds to think about it?
No, that's okay. We're good.
So in the Keeping the Faith scenario, am I Ed Norton or Ben Stiller?
I think you're Ben Stiller.
All right, very good.
Ben Stiller.
Bobby, thanks again for having us. I think this is a really important topic, and I do think that there is a certain amount of, there's a definite amount of discomfort with people talking about end-of-life issues, and particularly about dying and death. The process is not easy to deal with from our perspective, because oftentimes we're walking into a situation with a family that we may not know that well. And if you don't know the family dynamics and you don't know which roles which members play, who the patriarch or the matriarch or the decider are, who the antagonist is or the protagonist is, you have to be able to read that situation pretty quickly. One of the things that's critical for Frank and I in dealing with these situations is making sure that we at least are able to find out a little bit about the medical background with the decisions that are, the medical context, I should say, of the decisions that are being made. Our best situations are where nurses and doctors, and even sometimes the hospital chaplain or hospice chaplain can have a conversation with us before, just to give us a little bit of context, so that we can see, what's going on. And if they can give us a little bit of background about which parent member is having the most difficult time, which parent member is maybe being a little bit too assertive, we can help manage the spiritual, theological, underlying conversation. Typically, what we try to do is help put someone's life into context. No one's life should be defined by what happens in the last week of their life or the last 2 weeks of their life, or in the case of someone who's had cancer or going through chemotherapy, the last few months of their lives. It's really important for me to help families through the bigger picture of understanding that if we define someone by what they look like when they're dying, although that's a very natural, organic human thing to do, we're going to have a hard time letting them go. It's not instinctive for us as human beings to let our closest loved ones die. But if the goal is that someone is able to die in peace with their most important people surrounding them, their family members, their children, their grandchildren even, we want to be able to do that, and then let the process happen within the context of dealing with both reality and never ever telling a family that they shouldn't pray for a miracle, because that would be, I think, to an extent sacrilegious on our part.
Right.
We have to allow them to pray for a miracle, even if
even if the patient or congregant in this case is 104 years old.
Even if they're 104 years old and, clearly taking their last breaths, you want to be able to facilitate that. But keeping in mind that a lot of times the people that we're facilitating this for are in a coma or are on a ventilator and really can't speak for them, don't have a voice anymore.
Right.
And we have to take care of them too. I mean, that's our primary concern, is taking care of the person who is also dying.
Well, there's a context in the sense that when you're praying for a miracle, what that might in fact look like. A miracle for someone who's 104 might not look like rising out of the bed and going home. Healing might be an end in and of itself. And so you're walking into the room and balancing caring for the patient who's dying and the family surrounding them and their concerns is difficult, but one you have to manage. And that's why Rabbi said, trying to know more of the context and the situation, the people, their background, is super helpful. The other thing, too, is often what I'll do is keep the prayer fairly general and pray for one thing that everyone can agree on, and that would be peace. Mm-hmm. Whether that's, the Hebrew shalom, but that idea of wholeness, peace, rest. I've been in situations where just having that prayer, that we pray for peace, during the prayer itself, a person one time passed. And I think part of that was they heard those words and were like, okay, it's okay now for me to go.
Right.
And they died peacefully, and the family was peaceful. There's also a verse in Romans in the New Testament where Paul talks about asking the Holy Spirit to pray and intercede for us when we don't know how to pray or what to pray. And so sometimes it's okay, I think, to walk into a room and say, God, we don't know what to pray for, so we're asking you, who knows the hearts and minds of everyone in this room, that your Spirit prays on our behalf for what is best and what is right and what brings peace in the situation.
Really good insight from both Christian views as well as Judaism. And we're getting close to coming up on a break, and I And I want to just share something. I wrote a piece for the Jewish News, which is a publication right here in Phoenix, and I've had the pleasure of having Jamie Stern, who's the publisher and owner of it, on our show talking about seniors and talking about our aging adult population. And the piece I wrote is something I've talked about here on our show, and that's about having the conversation. Having the conversation about end of life with adult children, leading that conversation with their aging parents about having that. And I want to talk a little bit about that when we come up after this break so that I can at least get some perspective from you guys. With that, we're down one segment, ready for 3 more. You're listening to Health Futures, Taking Stock in You. We'll be right back.
McDowell Mountain Music Festival has been creating opportunities for children in the Valley of the Sun for 12 years and is celebrating their anniversary with musical performances by Widespread Panic, Passion Pit, Thievery Corporation, Fantagram, Portugal the Man, and many more. All proceeds from the festival will benefit family-based charities including Phoenix Children's Hospital and You Mom New Day Centers. Get your tickets now and help change Arizona's children's lives while enjoying great music in downtown Phoenix. Be a part of something special this spring and attend Phoenix's premier music festival, the 12th annual McDowell Mountain Music Festival, presented by Deschutes Brewery. Phoenix's only nonprofit 100% for charity music festival features an array of local and national music acts with an unforgettable festival experience. This year's festival will feature a newly redesigned VIP section with food and drinks provided by LTV Restaurant Concepts. Group ticket packages to be part of the ultimate VIP experience are still available. Visit mmmf.com for more information.
Hi, I'm Nick Grovich, host of Good as Gold, heard every Thursday at 1 p.m. on Money Radio. I have over 35 years of experience as a professional coin and bullion dealer, as well as a published author of 2 books that expose the inside workings of the rare coin market. Each week I'm going to share with you my tips on how to safely invest in precious metals and what to do if you're one of the 90% that were sold overpriced rare coins. Tune in every Thursday at 1 p.m. as I host Good as Gold, exclusively on Money Radio 1510 AM and 99.3 FM.
ProCopy is changing the way your company buys copiers and printers. ProCopy is offering a 100%, no questions asked, 12-month money-back guarantee. If for any reason during the first year you don't love your Ricoh copier from ProCopy, you simply give it back. No questions asked. Just tell us in writing and we pick it up. Of course, we plan on giving you the great service you've come to expect from ProCopy, including our famous 2.5-hour response time and free after-hour support, so you continue to love us and to remember.
If your fax is jammed or your copies look sloppy, dial 602. ProCopy.
McDowell Mountain Music Festival, Arizona's premier music festival, is coming back to downtown Phoenix. 23 bands over 3 exciting days. Purchase tickets now at mmmf.com.
Now back to Health Futures, taking stock in you. If you have questions about your own or your loved one's future health care, call 602-264-8009. Now, here's your host, Cypress HomeCare Solutions, Bob Roth.
Welcome back. My name is Bob Roth, and you are listening to Health Futures, Taking Stock in You. And we're coming at you live today from the Scottsdale Oil Park, and I've got Rabbi Stephen Kahn from Congregation Beth Israel, and I got Dr. Frank Shirvinski from Chaparral Church here in the studio. And if you missed the first segment, you can catch it up on our website. Go to cypresshomecare.com, and you can catch the podcast after we're done here. You'll catch the first segment, and you'll catch the next 3. So before we took the break, I was talking about having the conversation. And, death and dying is something that, people, want to kind of sweep under the rug. They don't want to think about. They don't want to talk about it. And I've been advocating for some time that adult children need to sit down with their parents, their aging parents, and really understand what their wishes are. And, I was talking about the Jewish News article that I wrote last week, and there was a line I used in there, and it was a great book that Billy Crystal wrote. And if you like Billy Crystal, who I like a lot, he's got a book out when he turned 65. It's called Still Fooling Them. And I listened to it in audio, and he narrates it. So if you really like Billy Crystal, get the audio version and listen to it. But he says it best in this book. He says, and you know how in the back of your mind you're thinking that you're going to be the one that gets away with it, that you're going to be the one that God, like a bouncer in a nightclub, lets slip by. It doesn't work that way for anyone. In fact, you know who else thought they might slip by? Everyone else that is now in the cemetery. So, I share that with you because, I think that subject has always been somewhat taboo. And, with hope being a major theme among the Judeo-Christian faiths, why do rabbis and ministers avoid that subject of death?
I think that it's because they are, look, we're human too, right? Don't tell anyone, but we're human.
You look human to me.
Thank you very much. We are often in a position where we project our own discomforts with a variety of topics, not just a lot of clergy does it with politics. They don't want to talk about politics because they're so uncomfortable,
right?
Or they don't want to talk about, they want to keep it to the text, or they want to keep it to the scripture. And so it's safer to stay away from the hospitals and the visits because they are so uncomfortable with it. Now, I think in my training personally, I was ordained in 1995 from the Hebrew Union College in New York, and they became more aware and more sensitive to giving us clinical experience in pastoral care. And I was blessed with great mentors too, really great mentors who brought me along more times than I can count to visit people in hospitals. In fact, the third week that I was a rabbi, a 10-year-old boy died in the congregation that I worked at in Denver. And I was there for the whole thing. I didn't have to take the lead, but I watched and observed everything. So I think that's changed, Bobby. I think that we're much more comfortable with it now because we don't project as much and we're trained better. Look, there's this idea of postponing inevitabilities that I think the human condition it's a counterintuitive part of the human condition. Let's postpone the inevitable conversations. Let's postpone the inevitable relationships. Let's postpone the inevitable financial decisions. All of these things are inevitable.
If we don't talk about it, then it won't happen, right?
Right. Not only if we don't talk about it, and it's more than just kicking the can down the road. It's actually just flat out ignoring it. And knowing in our conscious or unconscious mind that it's going to happen. Everyone knows consciously or unconsciously that they're going to die. They just figure that they'll deal with it when it happens. And that is, in many ways, and I'll use a strong word here, I think it's unfair. It's unfair to family members. It's unfair to spouses. It's unfair to kids. And it's unfair to the dying. You can't plan the day that you're going to die. In both of our faith traditions, that decision belongs to God. But you can plan for what happens when that happens. And there is so much support in this community for those decisions, from agencies and organizations and religious leaders and synagogues and churches to help facilitate just the conversation. And that's the article you wrote last week was really profoundly important.
And one thing I did leave off, just so you know, I talked about having conversations with your attorney, your professional CPAs, having conversations with your doctors, and I left off spiritual leaders because they should be a part of that conversation.
It's like a team.
Absolutely. You're part of that team.
Yeah, I was just at a class back at Emmanuel Christian Seminary in Johnson City, Tennessee, a couple weeks ago, and the professor was talking about at end of life and the privilege of being part of that conversation is that often, well, almost always, people have to call the lawyer, they have to call the funeral home, but they want to call you. And there's a real privilege in the fact of being a member of the clergy that you're in this very privileged position to walk this journey with them. Now, I will say from the Christian view, it's not monolithic, and you can't paint it with too broad of a brush, but I do think that we do talk a lot about death and dying. Jesus himself did, even when his disciples didn't want to hear it, and he still talked about it. And in fact, I think Christianity often is seen more of as we focus on what happens afterwards. Even we have some I consider it poor language of winning and losing. Were you won to Christ? I think that's very unfortunate language, because what Jesus did talk about was how to have hope and life today, in the moment, right now. Part of that process is having power to live in hope, knowing that God's taking care of the future, so you can focus on how you live today, and that includes the last days and how we can put ourselves aside to focus on those who are going through suffering and difficulty, and not impose our own fears into the situation as much as possible. I mean, we're still human, obviously, but as much as possible to let the gospel speak to that situation outside of our fears and concerns.
I've talked about it here on the show. I've had elder law attorneys on the show. I've had financial advisors on the show. We've talked about advance directives. And advance directives are one thing, but it's another thing to talk about what we've talked about here today, about having that conversation and not being afraid to have that conversation, talking about what does that family member want the end to look like.
Well, I think that's important in the sense that what I've found is people in my context, and people I talk to a lot, aren't so afraid of what happens after death. They're afraid of the process of death. So if they could just kind of skip the whole, the Woody Allen quote you have here, if we can skip that whole moment and just get to the back side of the door, they'd be much happier and more comfortable. But it's the process of going through it that they're...
And just so our audience knows the quote, because we shared this at the break, and that is from the great theologian Woody Allen, who said, "I'm not afraid of death. I just don't want to be there when it happens." What would you say to someone that is facing a life-limiting illness and death? And that's to your point. I mean, they're not really afraid of the end. It's the process. And how much pain are they going to be going through?
Right.
And speaking of pain, something that is relatively new in healthcare, when I say new, it's in the last 30, 40 years, and our society is really beginning to embrace it, is hospice.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And it's interesting because in HomeCare, we advocate for hospice because we can help that client that we're caring for, and other people in the healthcare profession refer to them as patients. We can help them manage that pain. Mm-hmm. And invariably, every one of my clients that we talk about this, they don't want to do it. And the reason why they don't want to do it, they view hospice as the Grim Reaper, as the end. But every time they do it, they do get back to us and they say, we should have listened to you. We should have started sooner. And I know both of you guys probably have opinions on hospice and what that does for your congregants.
It's wonderful. We've had only great experiences with hospice. And I'd recommend it.
Well, again, that's one of the resources that exists in this community that I think is premier in the country. Just going back to what you said before, you had quoted a couple of verses before. I wanted to quote something from the original version of the Ethical Will of King Solomon, which is a book called Ecclesiastes. And he says, Ki berov chokhmah rav ka'at v'yosif da'at yosif mavo, which means, for in much wisdom is much vexation, and he who increases knowledge increases pain. So I think that we have to at least acknowledge on this matter that the more you know about yourself and the more you know about your condition, and the more, to your question, the more pain it's going to cause initially. The more you know, the more complicated it is, the more difficult life is. And so giving people the opportunity to discuss that knowledge
we're gonna pick
can be healing.
We're going to pick this up in our next segment. We got to take a break. You're listening to Health Futures, taking stock in you.
As we reach the bottom of the hour, we pause for a look at the world's news. Then we're back with Money Talk. We're Money Radio 1510 and 99.3 FM.
ISIS claimed it is the mastermind behind today's deadly mosque bombings in Yemen, but don't believe that yet. Correspondent Barbara Starr reports the White House and Pentagon responses are skeptical.
Very caveated, very cautious response, because they are not convinced yet that ISIS is behind all of these claims.
Well, the State Department puts the death toll at over 130 people killed. Some estimates are as high as 137. 2 weeks ago, House Speaker John Boehner invited Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to speak to both houses of Congress.
Now Netanyahu's returning the favor, with Boehner planning to visit Israel during the congressional Easter recess. Other Republicans are likely to join him. The announcement comes a day after the White House said the relationship with the Jewish state needs to be reassessed, considering comments Netanyahu made about a Palestinian state in the days before elections.
That's correspondent Bob Costantini. The Dow is 196 points higher right now, S&P up 20. I'm Evan Haining.
Looking forward to your tax refund? So are identity thieves who steal refunds by filing fraudulent tax returns. Last year alone, they stole more than an estimated $5 billion from hardworking Americans just like you. Once identity thieves get a hold of your tax forms, watch out. They know that virtually all the information they need to steal your identity and even your life savings is right there. Help protect yourself with LifeLock Ultimate Plus. LifeLock Ultimate Plus provides protection for your Social Security number, bank accounts, investments, even the equity in your home. And while no one can stop all identity theft and nobody can monitor every single business, LifeLock Ultimate Plus provides their most comprehensive identity theft protection available. If you're filing taxes this year, especially if you're filing online, get LifeLock Ultimate Plus. Visit LifeLock.com and use promo code AWARE or call and mention AWARE to save 10%. Call 800-305-2203. 800-305-2203. 800-305-2203.
You found the one place on your radio that talks money, how to make it, spend it, and save it every day. Thanks for being with us.
Retire and stay retired, safe, smart, and secure. How can you potentially avoid future losses in the stock market like the ones we've experienced in 2000, 2001, 2002, and 2008? Call Anil Vanzarani and Secured Financial Solutions at 800-957-5604, extension 200. And learn about active money managers that had positive returns in those years. Listen to Anil Vanzarani on the Money Radio Show every Tuesday at 1 p.m. and Thursdays at 9 a.m. to learn about the concept of the principal protected low-cost new generation annuity and why it's superior in most cases than the high-risk, high-fee variable annuity and the obsolete hybrid income annuity. Call Anil Vanzarani and Secured Financial Solutions at 800-957-5604, extension 200, to set up your complimentary strategy session. Or go online at www.theripa.com. How strong and stable are the vital signs of your financial institution? Learn about the Comdex rating score of your insurance company that your banker, broker, and insurance agent may not want you to know. Listen to Anil Vanzarani and On the Money every Tuesday at 1 p.m. and Thursdays at 9 a.m. or give him a call at 800-957-5604, extension 200, to set up your complimentary strategy session today. You can also go online to www.theripa.com. That's THERIPA.com. Let Anil help you set up your secure retirement today. Don't wait. Call 800-957-5604, extension 200. Retire and stay retired. Safe, smart, and secure. Past performance is not indicative of future results. Read the prospectus for risk, fees, and charges. Investment advisory services offered through Brookstone Capital Management, an SEC-registered investment advisor.
SRP reminds you to stop, think, and remember. Never leave kids alone in the tub. For more safety advice, visit srpnet.com/safety.
I'm Bruce Vail with Your Money Now. The Obama administration has issued long-awaited regulations setting new standards for the oil and gas natural gas extraction method known as fracking. The regulations will set standards for wells and disposal of wastewater. They'll also require drilling companies to disclose the chemicals they use. But the rules only apply to the small percentage of oil and gas drilling on federal lands. Most fracking occurs on private or state land that won't be subject to the regulations. Spirits maker Diageo is following the lead of the food industry and will start putting calorie and nutritional information on the labels of many of its products, including Johnnie Walker Scotch, Smirnoff Vodka, and Guinness Stout. Stocks remain in positive territory at this hour. The Dow Jones Industrial Average is rallying. The Blue Chip Index is up 195 points. The NASDAQ Composite is ahead 36 points, and the S&P 500 is up nearly 20. That's Your Money Now.
Contracts that never end. Infuriating customer service. Rate plans that make your head explode. The old rules of wireless have never really worked, especially for business. T-Mobile has sent those rules to the shredder. Our Simple Choice plan delivers clear, straightforward rates. No haggling and no begging required. Now, our best price is the only price. And we'll lock in your rates without locking you into a contract. It's the uncontract. We make the guarantees, and you keep all the freedom. And your T-Mobile business account comes with 24/7 support from a dedicated business account team at no extra charge. Officially putting an end to DIY wireless. T-Mobile is changing the way business does wireless. Switch today at T-Mobile.com/business.
Qualifying service but no long-term contract required. Rate lock applies to the Simple Choice plan. Unlimited high-speed data pricing good for at least 2 years. High-speed data allotments price locked at speeds available at time of activation up to 42 megabits per second. See a T-Mobile store for offer details.
Now back to Health Futures, taking stock in you. If you have questions about your own or your loved one's future health care, call 602-264-8009. Now, here's your host, Cypress HomeCare Solutions, Bob Roth.
Welcome back. My name is Bob Roth, and you are listening to Health Futures, taking stock in you. And we're coming at you live from the Scottsdale Airpark in Money Radio Studios. And I've got Rabbi Stephen Kahn from Congregation Beth Israel, and I got Dr. Frank Shirvinski from Chaparral Church here in the studio. We're talking about end of life. And for those that are maybe just tuning in, we're a show about how to live a healthier, happier life for our aging adult community. And death and dying is something that is very much a part of our aging adult community. They think about this. They are worried about this, and as we've talked about, they don't really plan for this. They don't have that conversation that so many need to have relative to how they want the final days of their lives to look like. And it goes beyond doing the advanced directive stuff, and I totally endorse, and people who have listened to the show know that I endorse people to memorialize their wishes, but more than that, really to sit down and have that conversation with their loved ones to really understand what that looks like. So we've had a chance to talk during the break about various discussions, or various topics and various questions that I think our audience would love for our spiritual leaders that are in the studio today to discuss. And one is Alzheimer's disease, and Alzheimer's disease is a disease that I've had many people here in our studio on, our people in our community on. I've had Dr. Pierre Theriault, I've had Dr. Jessica Langbaum, I've had Dr. Marwan Sabah talking about some of the work that is being done at the Banner Alzheimer's Institute or over at Sun Health. And it is scary. And it is going to be, for the most part, as Dr. Theriault said, it's going to be pandemic. I mean, the numbers are just staggering. I mean, we got 5.2 million Americans that are afflicted with this disease right now. We got over 50 million Americans that are providing care for people with dementia, Alzheimer's, and aging. And right now it's costing our economy approximately $214 billion a year. And if we fast forward to 2050, we're looking at over 16 million Americans that are going to have this disease, costing our economy over $1.2 trillion. And that's something that we are working on. When I say we, I'm talking about the communities working on. NIH has really put a lot of focus in on it. And I just want to know from both of you guys, how does one provide optimum spiritual care for those loved ones that are affected by this disease? Because so many people think that once you get that diagnosis that they're not really there, but they are. They may loop a little bit, but they're human, and they have feelings. And yes, they do know that they're losing their memory, but they're real people. And I want to talk. I'll start with you, Rabbi Kahn. I want to talk to you, Steve, and talk about what kind of conversations are you having, not only with the person afflicted with the disease, but the family members.
So one of the things that I really found to be fascinating was about 2 years ago, I went in to visit someone who was in the advanced stages of Alzheimer's and was at home, and the level of exhaustion physical and emotional and spiritual exhaustion of family members is tremendous when it comes to caring for loved ones with Alzheimer's. It's sort of like taking care of a newborn in some ways.
It is. They regress.
Yeah, but more difficult because they're a little bigger, and they can still speak and they can still communicate, and people with Alzheimer's can still tell you what they like and they don't like.
Right.
So this guy found out when his daughter introduced me that I was a rabbi and started speaking Yiddish. And the daughter said, now Yiddish is one of the older Eastern European Jewish languages, dialects of German and Hebrew combined. And it's the language of the old country, so to speak.
It's one that's dying, and I hope it doesn't.
Well, it's coming back.
It's got to come back.
There are more universities now actually offering Yiddish.
I love it.
But that's a corollary. We can talk about Yiddish on another show. And this guy started talking Yiddish to me, and the daughter said she hadn't heard him speak Yiddish in probably 50 years since she was a young child. And it proves one of the things that we know, and I loved the HBO series that
was done, Maria Shriver.
That Maria Shriver did.
Beautifully done.
And everyone should watch that, especially people who have a family member with Alzheimer's, because it's just a beautifully done documentary. In his hard drive, so to speak, of his brain is his Judaism, is his Jewish heart and his Jewish spirit, which came out in him conversing with me in Yiddish. Now, I don't understand Yiddish or speak Yiddish. I only know the dirty words.
Me too.
There you go. So what does that prove? It proves that this person's heart and spirit and soul are no different than anyone else's. And they deserve, this gentleman in particular deserved me to come in and talk to him about the things that he wanted to talk to, just like anyone else. And it didn't matter if he knew who I was or remembered who I was or remember what we talked about 30 seconds ago. I was really, really moved by that. It was sort of, I felt like it was a way that God was communicating, so to speak, through this person about what their heart was all about, which was anchored in this deep, deep tradition and faith. And I was really, really proud to be there and have that experience.
Yeah, and the church, too, can provide that place where these are core identifying markers of who these people are. Mm-hmm. And so we can get to tap into those. One of the things we're doing at Chaparral is one of our ministers is starting a new ministry. It's called the Care Ministry. And what it's designed to do is to train our leaders on how to be caregivers and how to deal with some of the issues and talk to folks. Because like you'd said earlier, Steve, and you'd mentioned the numbers, is that training is super important because we're not going to be able to deal with, what did you say, 52 million people. The clergy won't be able to handle that, especially when the status of clergy is declining, the number of churches are declining. We're going to have to rely on training other people who, and also have relationships. I know that in several cases where you go to someone's home and maybe as the ministry you can't relate to someone, but you bring someone who they know deeply and had a long relationship with, and they can talk to that person. It does bring them comfort. So having the connections to provide the right people together is important.
Yeah. And, it's having the right people together. And certainly, I find myself almost as a clergy person as well when I'm dealing with the families.
Absolutely.
And I got to tell you, the family, is distraught and upset that their mother or father is behaving the way they are. And I have to explain to them, listen, that's their vessel. You can't be angry at them because they don't know what they're doing. Mm-hmm. And this is the illness. And that's hard. It really is. And I'm sure you guys deal with that as well.
I think that people need to give themselves permission to attend one of the gazillion support groups,
thank you,
care groups that are out there that will give them the tools to manage those feelings that they have, which are normal, to be frustrated and angry that this person isn't dad anymore,
right?
Quote unquote. They're all out there, and people just have to suck it up and go and get some help.
Exactly. And it's okay to get help.
How was that for a theological statement?
Suck it up?
Poignant.
Very poignant.
Not biblical.
It could be.
I could find it somewhere.
I think you could.
Okay, good.
You guys are listening to Health Futures, Taking Stock in You. We've got to take a break, and we'll be right back.
PhilsGang.com offers unique stock software called Phil's Talking Trader on a monthly subscription starting at only $14.95 a month. The Phil's Gang PTT charting software offers earnings data, audio notifications, and the charts are color-coded, so it's the easiest charting software on the market.
Their charts are wonderful. I like the PT1 and the PT2. I use them interchangeably. I have been with him for almost 4 years, and I found that his information is very useful in my being able to make this year 65% above my initial investment.
I would recommend to become a Phil's Gang member because he has his own charts, and like he says, it's follow the money.
The PTT 1 and 2, it really just tells you exactly what to do.
To subscribe to the easiest charting software available, that's philsgang.com. Give them a call, 877-600-GANG. That's 877-600-4264.
Hi, I'm Bob Roth, Managing Partner of Cypress HomeCare Solutions and host of the new and exciting show, Health Futures, Taking Stock in You. Join me every Friday at noon as I will discuss important healthcare topics like health insurance plans, nutrition, and senior living options, and much more. Tune in this Friday at noon for Health Futures with me, Bob Roth. This is Arizona's only show dedicated to medical and healthcare concerns of our aging adult population. Health Futures, right here on Money Radio, 1510 AM and 99.3 FM.
Hi, Bam Ransom here, along with Johnny Dean and Rick the Professor Plum. We know how important financial planning and wealth education can be.
So we're focusing the show on the investment strategy designed for the needs you have today and the goals you have for the future. Join us for Bucket Strategy Investing.
Bucket Strategy Investing.
Answering questions about your most important financial challenges, your 401ks, IRAs, Social Security, and more. Join us every day for Bucket Strategy Investing.
Toyota's One for Everyone sales event is going on now with low financing, special cashback offers, and more. Visit your Valley Toyota dealers or valleytoyotadealers.com today.
Now back to Health Futures, taking stock in you. If you have questions about your own or your loved one's future health care, call 602-264-8009. Now, here's your host, Cypress HomeCare Solutions, Bob Roth.
Welcome back. My name is Bob Roth, and you are listening to Health Futures, Taking Stock in You. And we're going to be opening up our fourth segment, and we're going to just cut right to it. I've got Rabbi Kahn from Congregation Beth Israel, and I've got Dr. Frank Shirvinski from Chaparral Church here in the studio, and we're talking about end of life and the aging adult families that are dealing with this and how to prepare for it. And Frank, you talked about, before we took a break, about this new ministry that Chaparral Church is setting up, and that is for caregiving and really promoting caregiving and helping people, with coping with caregiving and giving them those skills. And I'd love for you to talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so one of our ministers, her name's Sarah Prine, and she's been working on this project for a while. And the whole idea is that as we have less clergy to do that work, it's training other people to do it as well. And so there's a conception in our particular denomination. It's called the priesthood of all believers, that everyone in the church can minister to everyone and should. And Jesus called us to do those things. So you don't just turn it over to the, quote, professionals, that we are to help train each other to do this work. And so part of it is giving them the tools to go to hospitals, to visit with people, because there may be better connections than the clergy has with folks. They may be, for example, this was a number of years ago now, we had a young lady in our church back in Georgia who was in a car accident and was brain dead. And for 2 weeks, they're kind of going back and forth with, do they keep her alive, do they not? And what was great is that the church kind of adopted that entire trauma care area of the hospital. And so there was someone from the church there 24/7, all day, all night, every day, until she eventually passed. And it was interesting to see how few people were visited in other rooms. And so we really want to be a community that trains each other to be involved in other people's lives. And that goes down to learning how to do a hospital call, learning what things to talk about, what not to talk about, how to pray, those kind of very practical things that can help other folks.
First of all, kudos. Thank you. Because I've talked about it here on our show. We've got a dwindling caregiving pool. I mean, we have an aging population in our country. And, one of the things that we know is that we're going to have less and less caregivers because the population base is basically, the pyramid's going to be turned on its head. By 2056, there are going to be more people that are going to be 65 and older than 18 and younger. And I shared with you at the break the AARP study, which I've shared with our listening audience, showing the available caregivers, and caregivers ages 45 to 64, caring for someone 80 plus. By 2030, there's going to be less than 3. There's 2.6 available caregivers in our state caring for someone that is in need of care. And then by 2050, there's going to be less than 2, 1.8. So we need to have houses of worship and other people coming together to be a caring community to help care for our aging adult population.
Yeah, and what does it say about a society when the numbers look like that? What does it say about the moral underpinnings of a society where people don't choose to go into caregiving, don't choose to go into education, don't choose to go into the helping professions? I think
medicine too. Medicine's dropping down. There are less and less doctors.
Correct,
going to school.
because the environment, if you will, the infrastructure of the country is starting to collapse, and the cracks are showing themselves in the places where they're most needed. And so I think that we have a real important job, Frank.
No, absolutely. And
you and I alone have this important job, which is to bring exactly what Frank's message is. If we don't empower congregants to understand that meaning and joy in life is a verb, not a noun. This is stuff that you have to do. You have to pray with your feet. You have to teach with your heart. You have to go out and make it about others and not yourself, and use the skill sets that you have, which are oftentimes better than ours, or more advanced than ours, in being partners with God in the ongoing sustenance of our world. I mean, that is the religious message of what Frank is talking about, whether it's with the elderly or with kids or with education. You want to bring a message of hope. It can't just be the 2.3 or the 2 clergy sitting in your radio studio right now. It's got to be everyone. This is a very democratic, spiritual plank for both of us.
Indeed. And, we talked about, prior to the show, we talked about what the faith community is going to look like in the future. And I make no bones about it. I talked about it when I opened. Rabbi Stephen Kahn is my rabbi, and I get a chance to study Torah with you on Saturday mornings, and we've talked about the evolution of American Judaism in the last century. And, Frank and I, we've talked about the evolution of, Christianity in the last century, and you gave me some daunting numbers. I mean, 4,000 churches are closing a year?
That's the kind of the average right now. And let me say something as we talk about this quote, sad state of affairs. There's also a great hope in this, too, is what I've seen is that in this evolution, in this transition, is that younger people are looking to the church and saying, okay, Jesus said this, do that. We've come to you because we do see that we want to care for other people. We want to care and love our neighbors. We want to do that. We want to feed the hungry. They want to do those things, and looking to the church and saying, okay, well, how do we do those things? And what I'm so excited about for the church in particular is the church gets to do the stuff Jesus talked about because people want to do that stuff. So it's no longer about, in my opinion, having the best worship service or the fanciest buildings or the coolest campus. It's really about how can we train people to do the stuff that God cares about, to care for people the way God does, and train them to do that because they want to do those things. Right. And that's exciting. It's just up to us to do that work.
And those people in their 20s right now appear to be, just from my worldview, or at least my local worldview, doing it beautifully. And they're also, they don't care if the church or the synagogue isn't going to do it, they're going to do it.
Absolutely.
And they don't want, sometimes, for those legacy institutions like the organizations that exist, they don't want them near them, because they think the adults will just mess up the party, and so to speak. And oftentimes they do. And so what they're doing is they're bringing to us the ideas. I mean, people need to really, Frank, we have to underline what you said about the younger people. The people in their 20s right now, they rock. And there are some organizations in the Jewish community, like Moshe House. There's stuff that's coming out as a byproduct of Hillel at Arizona State University. These kids are plugged in, and they're ready to go. And shame on us if we don't listen to what they have to say and let them. I don't want to create the new ideas anymore. I want them to, because they're the future. It's more than the future. Their passion is inspiring to see, and it actually reminds me of why I went into the rabbinate when I see these younger people involved. And we're not that old yet. I mean, I still consider myself pretty young, but and you look good.
Thank you. You too.
Yeah, thank you. But Bobby, it's like your oldest daughter. I mean, these kids are phenomenally, and they're smart, and they're talented, and they're skilled, and we better listen to them. Because if we don't, in 20 years, there won't be your church or my synagogue for them to go to.
Right, because they're going to come to a church or synagogue because they want to be involved in the lives of people.
And look at us and say, what are you going to do about this?
Right. Teach us how to do it. Teach us how to do this, or we'll go someplace else.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Or we'll just create it on our own.
Right.
And the beautiful thing is that they're doing good.
They're doing great.
They're doing really, really great things in our community. They really are. And that is, I know you dismissed me just a little bit about future, but it is our future. We build our community based on our children. I mean, it's not my time anymore. It's right. It's their time.
And I didn't mean to be dismissive.
No, that's okay.
What I meant was they are the future, but they're doing really good stuff. But they're also our future. In other words, if we don't look at them and seek from them the answers to what our institutions can look like and what they should be doing, and most importantly, should not be doing, it's more than taking a step back. It's empowering them and saying, we trust you with our future.
That sounds like a great conversation for another show, guys. You're listening to Health Futures, Taking Stock in You. Rabbi Kahn and Dr. Shirvinski, thank you for being on the show.
Thanks, Bobby.
Shabbat Shalom. Have a great weekend.
Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you.
There's no place like home. You've been listening to Bob Roth's Health Futures. If you have questions about your own or your loved one's future health care, call Cypress HomeCare Solutions at 602-264-8009. That's 602-264-8009. Or visit CypressHomeCare.com. Be sure to join Health Futures with Bob Roth every Friday at noon, right here on Money Radio 1510 and 99.3 FM.
Hi, I'm Nick Grovich, host of Good as Gold, heard every Thursday at 1 p.m. on Money Radio. I have over 35 years of experience as a professional coin and bullion dealer, as well as a published author of 2 books that expose the inside workings of the rare coin market. Each week I'm going to share with you my tips on how to safely invest in precious metals and what to do if you're one of the 90% that were sold overpriced rare coins. Tune in every Thursday at 1 p.m. as I host Good as Gold, exclusively on Money Radio 1510 AM and 99.3 FM.
Money Radio 1510
and 99.3 FM.
Is KFNN Mesa Phoenix and K257CD Phoenix. Not a day goes by without something significant happening in the financial markets. Gary Kalbaum clarifies for you weekdays at 3 on Money Radio. Dow is up 175 points now. The NASDAQ is up 36 and the S&P 500 is up 20.
Just ahead,
Money Radio brings you the latest news, business news, Arizona business news, the weather,